Today on Keeba Live, we're going to talk about the homeless and who really are they. Stay tuned, we'll be right back. Well, as we can tell from time to time as we look across different fields and orchards and even downtown streets in different communities, we see what's called the rising epidemic of homelessness. Individuals that are just wandering around, setting up their tents in little villages wherever they can find a spot where they're not going to be harassed or moved on. Well, just recently there's been a big change. As we all know, the city of Puyallup, which is right now under a lawsuit by the National Law Center for Homelessness and Poverty, which filed the suit, by the way, on behalf of a bunch of campers who said that they were pushed out of their site and got given proper notice to vacate so that they could pick up their valuables before they left. This is kind of interesting. First of all, they're homeless and they're picking up their valuables after it has been posted that the law enforcement agency with the other departments are coming in to clean up an eyesore of epidemic syringes, human waste, garbage, and the list really does go on. Now, the homeless is a crisis across this country. There's no doubt about it. And removing people from public view is not the solution. At least that's what they're charging Puyallup with. Now, the national director of the homeless situation, as I call it, or poverty, has definitely made the statement beyond a shadow of a doubt that Puyallup's approach is not only cruel, but it is short-sighted, counterproductive, and a waste of taxpayers' dollars, as she reports to the Tacoma News-Tribune. The Law Center argues that there's no year-round emergency shelters for people to go to while campers cannot afford permanent housing. They say that the city has made no effort and even gone to the extent of making it difficult for churches and homeless populations with their restrictions and ability to, shall we say, hamper organizations that are private organizations to help offer services. So what we're looking at here is a lawsuit that's basically going after Puyallup, saying that they have Gestapo-styled removed the homeless, taken away their rights, dumped their private belongings, and have illegally removed them from sight of the city. The city of Puyallup wants to point out, by the way, that the lawsuit came from a large Seattle-based firm. I wonder what would ever make them think that. And that the complaint really is false in characteristics, a number of allegations and misstatements, and facts that just aren't true. The city looks forward to connecting with and changing this record and bringing out the truth. It argues that cleanups for camps are posed because of significant health hazards. Now, I don't understand what that would mean, just because there's rotting material, food waste, human waste, syringes, and other unique things that are definitely hazard to the health. Why would they take up such an attitude towards that? Now, Puyallup funds rapidly rehousing other homeless services have really gone down, and there's no doubt about it. It refers the campers to these services while promoting ample notice and significant time to collect their belongings. They don't get a time to remove them. So that's the whole thing from the city of Puyallup. So we can actually summarize it as simply this. Number one, the city of Puyallup is going to keep syringes off the streets and out of the hands of children. Number two, we're not going to turn out like King County, where you can shoot up heroin on every street corner if you wish, in front of children or even next to schools or different organizations that the public utilizes. We're going to say to the homeless that you can't camp out and sleep in the front of doors of businesses in town or in public parks that we taxpayers pay for or business owners pay to maintain. I think this is a very, very interesting approach. And I know that the homeless problem is more than just homeless. Now, we've got different sides to look at on the homeless situation. Number one, and I think the biggest one is the fact that we know for beyond a shadow of a doubt that crime increases in these homeless camps. It's very interesting to find out also the statistics are now coming in that criminals use these neat camping situations to infiltrate, to sell drugs, to rip off houses, steal cars, and cause mayhem wherever they go, under the disguise as being in a homeless situation. The Tacoma News Tribune reported that the National Law Center of Homeless and Poverty is going to file these suits because of the cleanup without adequate notice. My goodness. What kind of a notice do you need when people are defecating, throwing up, shooting needles, collecting stuff that they've stolen from the neighborhood, building shanties that are falling down or unhealthy for any human being to be in, when the city or county is just simply trying to clean this up to stop disease, to stop problems that come by drug addiction? Now, one of the biggest problems, and in this series we're going to talk about it, is the pregnant women. Now, I know everybody's going to come down on me and say, Bill, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. But we have sources through Cairo Radio and other sources that we're going to bring on to this series and play for you that will point out the homeless situation is more than just homeless. There are children. There are individuals that are mentally needing help. There are PTSD victims, and there are criminals, all wrapped up into one neat package called homeless. Now, the law center argues that there's no real reason that we should take such a hard look at it, especially in Pierce County. The Pierce County attitude is really, I thought, really very good. Just recently, we kind of I've noticed that Pierce County in different areas where the, shall we say, camps or encampments were growing, that they have moved them out. They have cleaned up the area. But that cost of cleanup is not cheap. An average cleanup site is right around $6,000 or more, when the city, county, and hazmat and all those other neat departments have to come down and clean up the mess to make it safe for the people that live in those areas. Just recently, Ed Troyer, detective PIO for the Pierce County Sheriff's Department, was on a radio show, and he kind of laid it out, I think, very beautifully, because he said Pierce County is a very different approach to the OPED homeless camping crisis. Quote, Troyer explained this week that they are often offering these people jobs if they'll help clean up the sites, that they're offering services to help them get back into the community safely and to be able to really change their lives. And then they are also, for those who, in which are approximately 93%, that decide, no, they don't need any of that stuff and they're not going to follow it, they also have a pair of handcuffs, which are for illegally camping and committing crimes in the county. What a great approach. Think about it for a moment. The approach has sent a clear message to campers in Pierce County that campgrounds is closing. Simple as that. That's right. Campgrounds are closing. With the King County now owning the third largest homeless population in the country, maybe it's time to take a different approach by the King County Council. It seems now that the poor officers that try their best in Seattle to keep law and order and protect citizens from crime have a hard time with the new laws, regulations, or lack of them that are promoted by the city council or county council. I mean, let's think about this for a moment. If you were homeless and all of a sudden the area that you were living in was getting tough, or let's even put it into a one-to-one perspective. If somebody in the homeless community told you that you could get a lot of benefits, if you are addicted to heroin or prostitution or getting money for drugs, could live on the city streets where they will feed you and take care of you and medically work with you, where they're talking about tiny houses and encampments for you so you can shoot up, get drunk, or do whatever you do. wouldn't you think to yourself it might be a great plan, since there is no real criminal justice going on, for me to move all of my wonderful belongings and head to King County? And several of them have, by the carloads. In fact, the Seattle mayor has now said that she believes that towns like Federal Way are helping these homeless people get onto buses and head to Seattle. That smaller towns and communities are dumping their homeless on the streets of Seattle. Now, King County is now owning the largest homeless population in the country. Maybe this is kind of interesting for you to think about. Now, we're talking about not just the city of Seattle. We're talking about the whole county of Seattle and how the largest population of homeless is making a mark for itself in crime, in prostitution, child neglect, and in mental health abuses. You know, these are things that people don't really think about, do they? Oh, yes, they do. It seems that in Seattle, however, the county council and the city council have a whole different idea on splashing money against a problem. When I say splashing money, I'm simply referring to the fact that they just seem to up the taxes and say that, well, with this additional new money that we have, we can fight this problem. We can offer those homeless people a helping hand up. No, they're not. Or they can build tiny houses for them, you know, and as long as they can keep offering all these free services without any type of accountability, and the people allowed to camp there while the criminals are going on to flock to King County, right behind the theory that these homeless that are coming into town are going to have carte blanche, the criminals now can hide out within those groups, and they too now will have carte blanche. What does this do? Well, I'll tell you what it does. It's just a situation of crucial poor planning, spending taxpayers' money with no accountability, and putting citizens in danger. I don't know if I can really talk about danger as far as what I see as danger, because what I see as danger is simple. People who are standing on the street corners with signs, "Please help me." They're either cons who just don't want to work and have a nice home somewhere, and they're just taking money for standing there, or they're supposedly veterans who, in many cases, probably have PTSD. They're needing help, or they're prostitutes, or just plain addicts who make up part of this community of homeless, wanting to panhandle from you a few bucks so that they can take care of their habit. Now, an average habit of heroin, for instance, has been documented running anywhere from $300 to $500 a day. So isn't this great? Now, you see, with the opiate problem and the heroin and the drugs, you can see how the dark side of humanity, the villains as I call them, or criminals, can easily slip in and utilize this sense of law unenforcement to really move their agenda. You can't understand until you take a look at what's going on the street. Put your feet on the street. Start looking at what's going on, because it's going to shock you. These camps are interesting to me because, you know, the people inside these camps have a unique communication system, because most of them know where, what time of the season, who's passing out free food, who's working on making sure that you have telephone service while you're out in the streets. They're working on how to find free medical services, dental services, and etc., which we're all paying for. You know, it's really bad when you stop and think about it, that nowadays you can even see people in the city of Seattle, which you have to agree, individuals who are standing in front of Seattle City Hall shooting up with heroin, and police officers looking the other way because their hands are being tied. This epidemic is causing more and more people to drift through other communities on their way to the Seattle home of the better deal. We have to pay for this, by the way, as I've mentioned 2 or 3 times, and will continue to mention, in our taxes. We have to clean up these facilities. But let's stop worrying about taxes for just a moment and let's start looking at the tragedy that's occurring to individuals that are